Next up, we have the best alternative / rock album. Again, this is one of those categories that, like best rap and trap, previous years we've had separate. Now we're adding together for multitude of different factors in the music industry. But we feel like of the rock and alternative persuasions and categories, we think there are certain ways that rock and alternative are being pushed even more forward. That's what the indie category is for. We did that a little bit earlier in a different clip in the Audioface Awards. But for this, alternative and rock together still have a lot to offer, and so we're going to go through those. We have Now Is a Long Time by Azeki, Screen Violence by Churches, Pressure Machine by The Killers, I Don't Live Here Anymore by The War on Drugs, Blue Weekend by Wolf Alice, Glowing in the Dark by Django Django, and Crawler by Idols. So this is a
all records are fantastic on their own right. It's very, very hard. This might be one of my hardest ones too.
Usually is one of your hardest picks, alternative and rock, and it usually is for me as well. But it's definitely a difficult one. Azeki is an artist that was one of my very early music recommendations when we first started the podcast, because I remember the song Touch and listening to that in college. And I was like, oh, this is really groovy and kind of sensual and has a really good vibe to it. It's hard to put it in a particular genre. And with Now Is a Long Time, you get a full Azeki project. And there's so much range and variety. It's very experimental, a lot of synthesizers in it, but you can definitely fit it into what we consider to be modern alternative. Screen Violence by Churches that we talked about. It's a return to form for them.
It's such a great record. Like, the more I listen to it, the more I appreciate it. The song with Robert Smith of The Cure, that's very good. Even their lead single, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but lead single I didn't like as a single in the context of the album. Now it makes me appreciate that song. He Said, She Said. That song now, like, I love it because of now in the context of the record, it's just fantastic. You have Pressure Machine by The Killers. You can almost put this as a return to form for The Killers, but I think some of the other work was kind of underappreciated in a way. But I think this is a fantastic record too from them. A band that normally we can kind of harp on, but we both liked it. Thought it was really cool storytelling of the way that they had it of their hometown. You have I Don't Live Here Anymore by The War on Drugs, which is just another banner from The War on Drugs, just absolutely top to bottom gorgeous. And another record where the lead single doesn't necessarily say what the whole record is, because I didn't like the lead single coming up to it, but now I like it because of the context of the record. But the title track, I've listened to that song on repeat like all year.
The War on Drugs is a very surprising thing. I know you like them very much. I hadn't necessarily been into them that much, but with I Don't Live Here Anymore and a lot of the tracks that were on there, it really opened my eyes to them. It's a really phenomenal
There's
record.
A lot of music because the last album they had, which is in 2017, I didn't get to talk about it much on the podcast because we were still new and trying to figure it out. And that's one of my favorite modern rock albums ever. You have Blue Weekend by Wolf Alice, one of my favorite pure alternative rock albums we have ever reviewed on Audioface.
It's one of those surprising ones, kind of like the Horrors 5, where didn't know what was coming when we reviewed it. We reviewed it and we were just blown away.
Blown away by it. Glowing in the Dark by Django Django, fantastic as well. Django Django, we've talked about a bit on the podcast. Really like the album top to bottom. Something that has grown with me over time. I don't know if it's the same for you, but when I first listened to, because there's a lot to listen to in that record, it was just a lot to process. By maybe my fourth or fifth listen to throughout this year, I've really liked it and I've gone to appreciate it. And then Crawler by Idols.
Kenny Beats, can't be wrong.
Oh my God, such a good record as well. Again, if you want to say that rock is dead, it isn't dead. You just got to find the good shit. And that's why we have this podcast. And this is such a damn hard category to go in. Man, you're gonna have to be the one that helps me on this too.
I've got a couple of favorites.
Let's hear 'em.
To me, it's between The War on Drugs and Idols, maybe Wolf Alice. Let me say some.
Those are my three.
Let me say some about the others really fast. Like I said, Azeki, great come up. I know you're only going to continue owning their sound, focusing it more, and really like getting to something great. So I got no worries for them at all. Screen Violence by Churches, again, they're a great, solid alternative rock project. I think just got to continue honing on where they are, and they will really be one of the greats of this generation era.
Yep.
The Killers' Pressure Machine, I almost would consider it a return to form. But it was so much of a concept record packed in what it was. It did a really good job of what it was, but I felt like outside of its concept, it didn't have that much staying power for like an album that I'd want to like represent album of the year.
Yep.
And then Glowing in the Dark, I felt like There's just some really good tracks, but unfortunately, there are a couple like alternative records that I hear throughout the
Mhm.
years that we do. Like everything Reanimator, where like these are some
Yeah.
really funky tunes. I like listening to them, but like they just don't have the staying power. I just end up not listening to them over for
Yeah,
longer
yeah,
than
yeah,
a little period of
exactly.
time.
But to me, those three of War and Drugs, Wolf Alice, and Idols, to me, they're the ones that just they encapsulate the goodness of this genre and stuff that people need to listen to get your alternative rock fix.
Blue Weekend with Wolf Alice did an awesome thing where like I don't typically like slower songs, but there were songs in that record that were slower but still felt like they were upbeat and they were
L-
expressing a lot of
Yeah,
emotion, but they were still lower pace. And
l-
that's a lot, it's a
yeah.
fine balance to run. And
Like
it's
the track lipstick in the glass, like that's a perfect example of like it slowly builds and builds and just has this beautiful crescendo in that track, and it's so good.
it's really
You
phenomenal
knocked it.
music.
Yeah,
I could be fine with pretty much all of these. I will
I
say,
know.
like, there are certain aspects of Idol's Crawler that I felt like weren't fully reading up to the whole like album thing. Like, it wasn't pulling
Yeah.
it all together as a full album project, but there were songs on there. Progress, I believe, is one of my
Mhm.
favorites. The one Beachland Ballroom that we reviewed as a
Mhm.
single, just phenomenal tracks, and again shows Kenny Beats'
Yeah.
versatility, even if I don't think it's gonna win
Yeah.
best rock album. This, so what's gonna be for you?
To me, it's honestly, I want to give it a tie between Wolf Alice and the War on Drugs. I can't say one is better than the other to me because to me they are both the encapsulations of good alternative rock. Like you have the slower, more acoustic stuff with the War on Drugs. Artist, a band that has been together for decades, and someone who can still make out, pump out these long ballads that are beautiful and still can also be in between the alt rock and almost indie scene. And then Wolf Alice is just this is what alternate rock can still be in this decade.
Yeah, it's
I just can't pick one. Like and I don't think we have to. Like honestly, we have to give it to both. They're
yeah.
so good. They're so good.
I think that's totally fine. I am completely capable of living with that. You've got
We've
those two.
got Wolf Alice and we have the War on Drugs.
And we have my union mandated lunch break.
And
Very valuable,
very valuable.
non fungible, one of a kind. A little too salty.